This is cool. Okay. Now let me start. My name is Orlando Caran, and I will be your teacher for this class. This class right now, and I tend to share my lectures, is shared with an online section, so it's online and off. I don't know what, sometimes they make two sections, sometimes they make one. But for the most part, I try to keep up and keep the exact same thing online and off. This helps the online students because they get to see the lectures. It actually helps the face-to-face students because you have the lectures recorded and you can watch them again or miss class and watch the lecture, right? By the way, if you are online, I do not mind, and as far as I know, it is allowed by the university, if it was allowed. If you are an online student but happen to be in the area and you think that sometime coming in person would help you, feel free to come. If you're a face-to-face student, I hope that you will find this actually useful and come. But if you don't, that's perfectly okay. I will notice because there's only 6 students in here, but I won't care. I don't know your name, so it's okay if I notice. So it works either way, and it works halfway, right? If you need to miss a class, miss it. You don't need to tell me. As long as there is not a test or anything like that, you need to tell me. And all of the assignments and stuff are sent online. So there is nothing, there is no problem whatsoever if you need to miss at some point in time. Since I'm recording this, I will not go to D2L and tell you, but over there is my contact info with my cell phone. If there is an emergency, you can call me, you can text me. You can also email me. It works almost like calling me on my cell, right? My cell phone gets email, and so I will look at it. However, this is my moonlighting job. I have a real job as a programmer for an Amazon subsidiary. So I normally don't listen to you guys during normal business hours. So 9 to 6-ish or something like that, I won't look. Sometimes I'll look, right? So if you send me an email at noon, I may read it, and if it's something super fast, then I'll answer, yes, no, maybe. If it requires more thought, then I will ignore it and hopefully answer it later. Sometimes. Most of the time. I try. So, actually, I am doing the wrong things. Okay, that's good. Let's talk a little bit about the syllabus. And everything is linked from D2L and also from here. So this is my name again. I do have a PhD, so if you don't want to learn my name, you can call me doctor. I like my name, so if you want to call me Orlando, it's perfectly okay. Whatever you prefer. I don't mind. What is this course? We teach you Java, but we are really not teaching you Java. We are teaching you how to program. We just need a programming language so that you can practice. And we use Java. Why? Because we use Java. It doesn't terribly matter. All languages are similar. If you learn one, you can learn the other. Java is probably not the best choice, but it's not the worst either, and that's what we use. So we will do core programming topics. We will do object-oriented programming features, including inheritance and polymorphism. And introduction to data structures, including 1D and 2D arrays, array lists, and a little bit of file I/O and exception handling. The idea is to teach you how to program. If you have done programming before, in any way, shape, or form, if you have done Excel macros, if you have done R or Python or something else, this class will probably be fairly easy. Life will be good. You'll find the class easy and wonder why the heck are other people having trouble. However, if you have never done programming, this class will be hopefully a lot of fun, but it will be really, really hard because you are going to have to learn how to think in a different way. It's going to warp your brain, which is really hard, right? So be aware, and I will say this a bunch of times during this lecture, right? At the undergraduate level in KSU and SPSU before, and kind of traditionally in the US curriculum, this is equivalent to 2 classes. So the undergrads take 1301, or used to be called 1301, I have no clue what's the number now, 1301 and 1302. And they take them with labs. So it's like 8 credit hours, right? We say, well, we do want you guys to learn how to program really well, but we also want you guys to eventually graduate. So we are going to condense it 2 into 1. Good thing about it, you pay once, you get out earlier, right? Bad thing about it, it's going to be tough, right? It's not undoable. Every semester, I've been teaching this class now for about 2 years. The vast majority of students pass the class with no problems with A's or B's. There is a small but not too small percentage of students who do not. So I want to make sure that you guys come with your eyes open, right? It is perfectly doable if you have never programmed before to come, be challenged, put a lot of effort, get out of class, right? Sometimes you are wired that way and it's super easy regardless. Sometimes you don't even remember, but you programmed BASIC when you were 15, and then right, the class will still be easy. But for a lot of people who have never done programming, this is going to be hard. Be aware of this. Make sure that you can put the time into it, and all will be good. But be aware, if you are working full time, and like this is a 3 credit hour course, the graduate class, so you should put about 3 hours outside of the classroom per hour in the classroom. So you should put about 9 outside, about 12 total, right? If you're taking 1 class, it's probably okay. If you're taking 2, you just got a part-time job, right? If you're taking 3, you just got a full-time job, right? If you already have a full-time job, that may not be the wisest thing to do. Especially if by full-time you mean 24 hours a day. So be aware, be cognizant of the time. I'm not trying to scare you. I just want you guys to come in with your eyes open. Textbook, think Java. You can buy it. It's actually a good textbook, but you can also read it completely online for free. And that's why I chose it. It's a good textbook. There's a million other good textbooks. What are the objectives for the course? And this looks like legalese in academic, right? Demonstrate skills in the use of core programming concepts, data types, expressions, control structures, logical expressions, selection, repetition. All concepts, definitions, classes, that kind of stuff, arrays, and file I/O and exception handling. I just repeated this stuff in the paragraph above, but it looks, right? This kind of gives you an idea of what we are going to cover. Grading is the standard grading scale, 90 to 100 is an A. and so on. By default, right, 89.99 is less than 90, so you get a B, not an A, right? We have to put the cutoff somewhere. That's the cutoff. How do you get graded? There it is. There will be online discussions, and a bunch of people have already logged into D2L and commented. I have no clue whether you have or not, but I expect you to comment over there. There are like maybe 5 or 10 throughout the semester, and then I expect you to ask questions if you have questions and that kind of stuff. There are programming assignments. There is one every weekish. It's not quite true. I think we have like 14 or 15 weeks without breaks, and we'll have 10 or 11 assignments. So it's roughly one every week. It's not quite every week. They're relatively easy, but not that easy. So those are 35%. There is one midterm that's worth 25%, and the final exam is worth 35%. Oh, I lied. I need to go modify my syllabus. I tried to make it easy for you to remember, so everything is due on Sunday at 11:59 p.m., right before midnight. Grace period until the first class, which is actually not Wednesday, that was last semester, it is Tuesday. If you cheat, I will kill you. Don't cheat. What is cheating? Passing somebody else's work as yours, right? If you ask questions, it is perfectly okay. I will give you all the help that you need. Just don't cheat, right? Nobody other than you should feed your actual assignments, right? Either to give you help or to read it or something like that, other than you and me, of course. And the assignments are, we'll talk about it, but you can submit and keep submitting. You can submit, we'll see how you submit. I can give you feedback and you can submit again and again and again. There is basically, the assignments are not a measure of how, they're a measure of effort, right? You should be able to get 100 on every assignment with no problem whatsoever, as long as you start early. And then, right, you can get feedback before the due date and life will be good. For grading assignments, I expect that your programs will at least compile. I tend to be lenient with due dates, except when we start talking about the solutions in class. Once I talk about the solution, then that's it, right? I will not take any more submissions. But you will see that you can write your code, and there may be pieces that break it. You can comment out those pieces, have the code compile, and then submit. If it doesn't compile, I usually don't even look at it. So be aware of this. I cut and pasted this from other professors. I expect you to more or less talk in English. I normally don't care, but I tried to respond to emails within 48 hours. It actually sucks that sometimes there are two things that matter. One, if you don't get a response within 24 hours, feel free to email me again, right? And I will, I don't mind. I truly don't mind. The other thing is, if you expect an answer, ask a question. If you send me an email that says, I'm having trouble with assignment 4, there is no way for me to answer that, right? I mean, you just told me a statement of fact. Yeah, you're having trouble with assignment 4, right? If you tell me something like, having trouble with assignment 4, I submitted a merge request. Can you please comment on my, can you please give me a hint of how to solve question 3, or something like that, then that is something, right, where I will feel compelled to answer. If no, no. So if you don't ask a question, don't expect an answer, but feel free to bug me again and again and again if I don't respond. Usually I try to be good, but sometimes life happens. If there is something major and you cannot take a test, then we'll figure it out. Other than that, right? Assume that you'll be here for, there's only like 2 tests, right? All the other stuff is online. You can do it from your hospital bed. If you need special accommodations for whatever reason, ask. If you don't ask, I will not give you any special accommodations. Same for religious holidays. If you have a disability, come ask. I'm more than willing to do whatever will help you. I try to publish a course schedule, but sometimes we change stuff. So it's a plan, not a suicide pact or anything like that, right? We may move some things. I try to not do it with tests, but all the other stuff, we may move some deadlines. If you are here, I expect you to come to the midterm and the final, right? You're a face-to-face student. Those are the only 2 classes that you have to come. If you're an online student, I hope that you can, if you are around the area. I hope that you will be able to come and have those things proctored, but if not, we'll make arrangements. And if you live in Texas or Hawaii or something like that, I don't expect you to come. We'll do arrangements for proctoring. Okay. I'm confusing myself. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about programming. Who here has done some programming? Some? No? Okay, cool. We program in a programming language that looks like really weird, stilted, autistic English. It's a very formal version of English. But for the most part, it is English. However, computers don't understand that language. So we need some translator that translates that language. In the case of Java, we have a compiler that transforms Java programs into machine language. For Java, they decided that rather to compile it into the machine language that the machine actually understands, so rather than compiling it into x86 assembler, right, that the computer actually understands, they will compile it into their own virtual machine. So the compiler can be the same, and it compiles from Java to the JVM, and then what needs to change for different computers is the JVM. Does that make some sense? For the most part, you don't care, but it's good to know. Yes, continue. Now, your program is just a bunch of text. There is nothing magical in Java. It's just a bunch of text. bunch of text files. We tend to call them .java rather than .txt or .doc or .whatever, but they're just a bunch of text files. What do you use to edit text? A text editor, right? Word is not a text editor. It's a word processor. Don't ever use Word or anything like that to edit your programming code, because it will mangle it very happily. It will change the quotation marks so that they are closed quotation marks, which are slightly different from the ones that open or something like that, and just destroy your code. Don't ever use a word processor to edit code. But you can use a text editor. What text editors do you know? Notepad, right? If you use Windows, Notepad is your text editor, right? Who in here uses Windows primarily? Sorry? You use all of them?
I use OX.
OS X, Mac. Okay, cool. On the Mac, what's the text editor? God, I don't even know. Something like text editor, but it's a text editor / word processor. I think that it wants to word process your files. I tend to install Visual Studio Code in all of my machines. I use Linux, Windows, and Mac. And so Visual Studio Code runs in all three of them and looks kind of the same. So I tend to install it. It's not Visual Studio. Visual Studio is a really nice IDE, but it's huge and it only runs on Windows. Visual Studio Code is a simple text editor-ish. So you use a text editor to program your Java files. You then use a compiler to compile it, and then you would use the JVM to run it. But we normally don't do that. But let's do it, because why not? Let me go install git bash. Bash is a shell. Git is the version control system that we will use, and the guys who decided to package Git for Windows were nice enough to not just package Git but also package Bash. So, kind of the first thing that I do. Yeah. And my Windows machines, they all have this because that makes them almost usable. Now there are other ways to run Bash and stuff on Windows, but this makes them behave like a real computer. Yes, I'm biased towards Unix. Yes. Let's see if we have Javac. Typing on the wrong place. No, we don't have Javac. This is horrible. While we start doing stuff, let me go download. I will also point you to a couple of sites that let you do this stuff online, over the web. And that's just so you can do it when you don't have, right? I'm assuming that you will install and you will actually have a computer that you can use that has Java and all the compilers and stuff. But sometimes you're in a different place and you don't have access to that computer. Java REPL and CodingBad are websites that let you program in Java in a webbish interface. However, the other thing that I was going to mention is text editors are nice and compiling in the command line is nice, but many times you want, if you're going to be working doing the same stuff over and over. You want tools that give you better access over that stuff. Those are IDEs, integrated development environments. Basically, they are fancy text editors that keep track of the whole project. So you may have a bunch of files rather than just one, and they have nice keystrokes for compiling and testing and all of that stuff. They don't give you anything that you don't get from the command line, but they make it prettier and nicer, integrated. That's why they are integrated development environments. IDEs. God, I'm a horrible human being. I will not be using Eclipse. I'll be using IntelliJ. I thought that I had killed Eclipse from all my notes. I will be using IntelliJ for this class, and I have not they changed this stuff. It's IDEA. IntelliJ is now it used to be the name of the text editor. Now they make editors for a bunch of languages. So IDEA is the Java one. I still call it IntelliJ. It is free. The community edition is free and has all that we need. They'll be happy to take your money. If you eventually do this for a living, you may want to pay for it or get your company to pay for it. But for this class, the free version is more than enough. There is a couple of other ones, Eclipse and NetBeans. They're good. They're all equally goodish. It's just that now in my company we use IntelliJ, so it makes my life easier if we use IntelliJ. If you use any of the other ones, I'll be more than happy to help you any way I can, but I don't make any promises because it may not be installed in my machine or anything like that. Where is this thing? Did it download? Yay. So, install yourself thingy. Next. Yes. Yes, sure, whatever. IDEs are nice. They give you a nice UI, but they are a pain to, like most graphical user interfaces, they're really hard to explain over the phone or in an email. And they are also very easy to get slightly different in different places. Most programmers, or many programmers, and myself absolutely, prefer command line interfaces because those don't change, and they can actually send you on an email, type this command, as opposed to go look at the purplish icon that's kind of on the right, and then those instructions become a pain. So, and also those things tend to stay broken. When you break them, they stay broken, as opposed to sometimes they fix themselves magically and you know what happened. So, in the Unix world, and this became all over, they were using C programs 100 years ago, and they came up with a program called make that will, if you have a bunch of files and you want to compile all of them, it's not worth, if a file hasn't changed, you don't need to recompile it. And so, right, sometimes people would just start saying, oh, I haven't changed, so I need to compile only this one, but not all of this. Compiling actually takes a lot of time. And so they figure out that, well, computers are really good at doing that kind of stuff. So they came up with a program called make that would do that. You would tell it, compile all of these guys, and it will go look, when is the last time that I compiled? What's the output of the compilation? Do I need to compile it again? And if you don't, then you don't. And it's actually more than that, so you can establish kind of a graph of dependencies, but that's the basic idea. I call it make regardless, but there 700 different versions of these kinds of things. In Java, there is Ant and Maven. And then there is a bunch of them. Ant and Maven are very popular. The other popular one that's relatively new, that's the one that I like, is Gradle. And I prefer it because it looks like a programming language. It actually is a programming language. The other ones have horrible XML files that just give me the creeps. I hate XML with a passion. They all do the same kind of stuff. I will just be using this one, and I give you all the files. So you don't really need to. And what that allows me to do is to tell you just run this command, and stuff happens. So I will give you two ways of doing things. You can do it from the command line or with an IDE. And hopefully at least one of them will work. Right? Usually they work. Sometimes stuff happens. You have a wide variety of machines that may be broken in a wide variety of ways. And so I will try to help you, but if not, having two ways makes sure that you can do it one way or another. The other thing, and this will be slightly painful for a little while, but then it will be amazing, I promise, is version control. How do you control versions? If you're working on a big project, if you'll work on like a big Word document or something like that, right, where you need to work on it for a week or two, how do you keep track of version? Sorry? In one Word document, or you probably start saving it with document 1, document 2, document 3, right? Add dates or numbers or something like that, right? And it usually sort of kind of works. What do you do when you're doing that with a group of people? Like you're doing a group project and sending Word documents. What happens all the time? Conflicts, right? You send it, and then you keep working on the one that you have, but they modify the other one, and it becomes a big mess, right? How do we deal with it? We sit, curse, have a beer, and fix the conflicts, right? Yes, there are tools, but right? Normally that's how we fix it, right? It kind of sucks. We do it, but it kind of sucks. As programmers, we said, wait, wouldn't a computer program be good for doing this stuff, right? And so we came up in the 80s with version control systems that allow you to keep versions of files, and these are text files, so they're really easy to compare and to keep versions of, and keep track of all the changes. Not all the changes like keystrokes or anything like that, but you keep named changes and you keep a history of all that stuff. And so you can go look at who changed what when, keep tons of versions of different things, and not get too confused. Does that idea make sense? There is hundreds of different version control systems. We will use Git, which is a piece of software. In particular, we will also use GitLab, which is a website that gives you a free Git server. So it gives you another machine other than your machine that will keep your code, and that allows us to share that code. Does that make sense? So the first thing that you need to do if you haven't done it is go create an account on GitLab and send me an email with your KSU username and your GitLab username, which is case sensitive, and then I will create your account, create your repo, and share the code with all the assignments. Is that cool? The good thing about it, right, you are probably gonna hate it for a week or two. It's gonna feel weird, but after you do it a couple of times, you can get the assignment, right? The assignment's already there. You can make changes, and you send your changes to me. I can run all the tests against your code, see whether it works or not. I can give comments, both if it doesn't work, I can give you hints to how to make it work, or I can give you kind of style comments that tend to be very like, if it works, it's good. But sometimes your code is horrible, it works, but it could be improved, and I'll give you ways to improve. So it becomes kind of it's revisions, right? That's the idea. And I can tell you, hey, you can improve here, or this is failing because of this, and things like that. And it is actually, when it works, it's beautiful. I actually, like, many times people don't realize that you need the full context. So if you give me a piece of code by itself, it may or may not work. When you put it inside a bigger program, right, it may be doing something different, right? So many times students will send me just their tiny piece of code, and that doesn't give me enough context. Sometimes it's horrible, they send me a screenshot, and then I cannot even cut and paste that into a different context or something like that. But if you send me a merge request, then I get access to exactly what you have on your computer, right? And also you get exactly how I'm gonna run it. So we are both using the same code. You get to run it on your machine, the exact same test cases that I'm gonna run against your program. So it will be beautiful, just get used to it. And initially it may feel weird as well. I'm gonna ask that you install the Java development kit, the Java compiler. I am slightly lying again. Java 8 is not the current version anymore, but install Java 8. I haven't tested. Java 9 just came out like a month ago, but I haven't tested all my stuff with the Java 9. I will, but it's probably safer to install Java 8. You need to install a Git client. If you're using a Mac, just open your terminal program and type Git, and if it's not installed, it will tell you. Do you want to install it? And you say yes or something like that. I haven't done it. All my machines have it by now, but it will tell you what to do. Either go to this web page or press yes or press something like that. If you are on Linux, it's the same thing. Type Git. It will probably tell you do apt-get install Git or something like that. If you are on Windows, it will tell you to go download it, and it is this thing that I downloaded. We have Javac. We do. So now that means that I can type Javac. No. I can close this guy and open it again. Maybe that will now have. Not the GUI. Now, beautiful. Configure Java. Oh God. This is. Hopefully your hopefully your Java is Windows. Sometimes it does the right thing, sometimes it doesn't. Hopefully your version of Windows, it actually updates the path. Sometimes it doesn't. Continue sharing, please. I am hoping that you will download IntelliJ. We may, download IntelliJ because why not, right? Assuming they don't have it. They don't. Oh, they do. So we have IntelliJ, and we actually had Java C probably, but. I do have instructions on the setup and videos and stuff about this stuff. The first thing that you need to do is go install this stuff on your machine and do assignment 0. Or go install that. Actually, go create your GitLab account. Send me an email so that you can actually do assignment 0. And then install everything on your machine. Right? Let's talk a little bit about variables and operators. And we'll do kind of assignment 0 on Thursday. There is a video, but we'll do another walkthrough and after you guys have played a little bit. By the way, I haven't found a good way to not overwhelm you the first couple of weeks. There is no good. You need to know a bunch of stuff before we can really get started, and there is no good sequence. It's just all this stuff at the same time. So what I do is overwhelm you the first week or two. I am very lenient with deadlines. The official deadline for assignment 0 is this Sunday. I expect some of you will finish, but not all of you will finish, and I will not complain. Assignment 1 is next Sunday, and that one starts becoming real. But I'm still expecting that some of you, especially since some of you may not join the class until Thursday or Tuesday, right? Sometimes people join late, sometimes stuff happens. So assignment 1 is still kind of and then assignment 2, we start having real deadlines. It is a good idea, if you can, to front load the work. Do as much as you can, as early as you can, so that if you have an issue, you can fix it, as opposed to try to do it a day before it's due and then bad things happen. So start as early as you can. So I'm gonna play with Java REPL. A REPL stands for read, eval, print loop. So basically reads what you type, evaluates it, and prints it. Java is a programming language. You can use it as a calculator. 3 plus 5, and so it's gonna say 8, right? But that's not terribly useful. This is not a full Java program. We'll see full Java programs, but Java REPL gives you something where you can play with a little bit of something like Java for simple expressions, right? Now, can you guys read? Close enough? Cool. If you can't, feel free to move to the front and center. That means you. If you can't read, it's good. I am nearsighted, I guess. I cannot see from afar, which means I would need to be like standing next to the desk. But now, in order to be able to save our computations, many times in Java, we are going to define variables, that is, name places where we can store data. And when we define them, we need to specify what kinds of data we can store. So we can do int a that creates a variable called a. A equals 5. So now if I type a, Java knows that a is 5, right? That a equals 5 looks almost like math. It is not. It has nothing to do with algebra. It has, but it hasn't. Why? Because I can do something that would horrify your math professor. A equals 6. And now a is 6. I just changed the value of a variable, right? In math, your variables, right, stand for values, but they can never change. In programming, they do. They change over time. So a variable is just a box where you can stick values. Does that idea make sense? The usual-ish operators work. So I can do plus, right? So I can do a equals a plus 1. What's the value of a going to be after this? 7, right? That is horrible in math, but it works here, right? I can do a divided by 2, or well, let's do a minus 1. So now it's going to be what? A times 3. A divided by 4. Yeah. Some of you are remembering your elementary school. It's an integer, so it can't be 4.5. Right? What did you do in elementary school? What's 18 divided by 4? It is 4 with a remainder of 2, right? So it is 4. You do this, we're going to get 4. If I type on the right place. And if I want to get the remainder, I would use the percent sign. What would this be now? 1, right? Because we have 4, and the modulo of 4 modulo 3 is 1, right? The remainder of 4 divided by 3 is 1. Does that make sense? That is for integers. You can combine what the heck happened? Oh, I don't know. Right? What is that expression? That, who knows, right? I got all confused myself. How does it, right? How does it associate, right? If you get confused, what do you do? Add parentheses, right? And this is what happened. So I did 10 plus 5, that's 15, minus 3 divided by 2, that's 1, times 5. So it's minus 5, so it's 10. Does that make sense? The usual-ish rules of math apply, pandas, all of that stuff that you learn in elementary school. You have two choices. Either learn all of that stuff and what associates first and what gets done first, or use parentheses, lots and lots of parentheses, and then you never get confused. Does that make sense? And you need to do a little bit of both, right? Hopefully, when you start, you may find out that you get really confused and you need tons of parentheses. As you keep using these things, it will become more familiar and you will stop doing that. How do you get to the point where this stuff becomes second nature to you? Practice, right? So what should you do when you get home today? Go to Java REPL and practice. Type stuff, see it, experiment, right? Come up with new ideas. What happens when you do negative numbers? What happens when you do, right? How much do you need to practice? Until it makes sense. Who knows whether you need to practice more or not? You. I don't. I have no clue whether you got it or not. You do. You're adults. Practice, right? It is a lot better if you practice 5 minutes a day for 6 days than if you practice 30 minutes one day, right? So, which doesn't mean that you should only practice 5 minutes, right? It's a lot better if you practice an hour a day for 6 days, right? So, do practice a lot. If you can, try to practice every day or often, right? 3-4 times a week, something like that. This is an intro class. It is drop and give me 20, right? I mean, how do you learn how to ride a bike? Get on the freaking bike and fall until you don't fall anymore, right? That's why you learn when you're a kid, because you're gonna fall a lot. How do you learn how to bat? Swing a million times until you start hitting the ball, right? It is like that. You need to practice a lot. And it will click, it will make sense, and it will be really easy. Just like riding a bike or swinging a bat, right? Once you get it, and you can usually more or less ride a bike, right? Even if you haven't ridden one in 20 years. It's that kind of stuff, right? And you can, well, I don't know if I can bat an actual baseball, but I can hit a tennis ball. How about that? And when you have kids, you realize that it's not as easy as it seems. But does this idea make sense? So we have variables. We declare a variable by putting the data type. In this case, the only data type we have seen is int, and then the name of the variable. We can assign values to variables, something like a equals 10. We can use more complicated expressions. We can change the value of variables, and we can do stuff in different order, and that can confuse us. So we could have slightly more complicated code like this. What does this line do? Declares a variable, right, called A. What does this line do?
Declare another variable B.
Cool. What does this do? A is 10. Now B is A plus 1. What is now? B is 11, right? A equals B plus 9. That would be 20. Did B change? Not on this line, right? This line doesn't change B. B is still 11. We didn't touch it, right? The fact that B on the previous line was A plus 1 doesn't mean that it will be A plus 1 forever, right? B is still 11, and A will now be 20. Now, we're going to be typing this stuff a lot, and so we can do things to make us type less, at the possible cost of making our code harder to read, right? There is a small trade-off. Usually it's not that bad. We can declare and initialize at the same time. Int c equals 10. To me, that actually is even better, right? Because I know exactly what I'm doing. And why the heck did I make c 10 or something like that. But when you're starting, this looks confusing, right? You're doing two things at the same time. And this is actually slightly less useful, but, and that is declaring several variables on the same line. So what does that line do? How many variables did we declare? Three, x, y, and z, right? And x is going to be 10, y is uninitialized, and c is going to be 11. Does that make sense? again, practice, right? Important thing, variable names. Programming, I can't remember who said this, right? Programming is about communicating your intent to other programmers and only incidentally to computers, right? Somebody else is going to read that code and decide whether it was the right thing to do, right? So naming your variables A and B are probably not a good idea, right? You should use descriptive names. Does that make sense? Should be age or I don't know what B stands for, number of beers or something like that, right? In Java, you can have, and there is a trade-off between a short name, which means less typing, less carpal tunnel syndrome, and a long name, which means more description, right? So you need to manage. Initially, I strongly recommend you actually err on the side of really long names, and then you can decide. In Java, your variables have letters, numbers, or digits, a dollar sign, and an underscore, and they cannot start with a digit because they'll get confused with an actual integer constant. Java is case sensitive. Lowercase a is different than uppercase a. It is a horrible thing to ever have two variables that only differ in case, because you're going to go nuts, right? But it is possible. There is no specific limit to the length of variable names. Eventually, there's a practical limit, and at some point in time, I guess, you run out of space on your IDE or something like that. But it's a really, 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 really long limit. There is a strong convention in Java. It's a convention. It's not mandatory, but there's a strong convention to start with lowercase names. Your variables always start with a lowercase letter, maybe with an underscore. And then if your variable name has several words, we use camel casing. So the beginning of each word, except the first one, is capitalized. So your variable names would be stuff like gear ratio and number of sides. Oh, God. Oh, well. Let me